Hi everyone, it's Rob Watson, let's turn the screen a bit. There we go, I'm in the middle now. It's Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH3501. It's Monday morning, it's just gone 8 a.m. And I think I've just barely woken up. This is the 11th video overview of the topics that we'll be covering in the last lecture before Christmas, before the Christmas break. So what we're going to cover this week is we've been looking over the last few weeks at the idea of intercultural communication, and this week what I want to do is kind of put forward some ideas about intercultural communication in the digital age and how digital and social media makes a difference to the way that we can think about and understand and comprehend and have access to different forms of cultural awareness. So what we'll look at is first of all, we'll kind of revisit what we think of our assumptions are of kind of culture, kind of the way that we maybe need to map out and turn around some different ideas about what we mean by culture and cultural communication. And what we're really going to challenge, if you like, is what's known as Eurocentrism. And it's the idea, and I'm not 100% committed to this idea, because I think there's as much good as in any social situation, and any social process is defined as much by what can be good within that process as what can be bad in that process. To assume what is Eurocentric is automatically a negative, oppressive form of engagement is actually potentially as destructive as assuming that it was all wonderful and that it's in its rightful place, kind of thing. But the idea is, the fundamental idea is that we're questioning the assumptions, those things that we normally take for granted, those things which we assume or are often assumed to be built into our worldview, which justifies what our worldview is. So we're going to look at this. I've noted some current issues about intercultural understanding and where kind of conflict and there's a kind of sense of incongruence. I think that's one of our key words in this module is the congruent and the incongruent concepts, those things which fit, those things which make sense, those things which work, and those things that don't fit, and those things that don't work. So we'll look at this in the context of coming out from a model of understanding culture, which is through the cultural studies model. And in a way, what we're trying to do is we're trying to reject the assumption that it's easy just to kind of dichotomize our understanding of culture, so that we can either present it as Occidental and Oriental on the one hand, or Western and non-Western, or North and South, or East and West. And these are kind of prevalent questions that the cultural studies tradition challenges. And it's also, kind of localism and globalism. How do we make sense of our engagement with the world and the different conceptual realities that we have of understanding the world through the process of globalization, and at the same time retain our sense of engagement through local activities? So what we're kind of dealing with is an area which is highly uncertain, it's contested, it's contingent. That means that it is of the moment, and it will change, and it will be represented and renegotiated in different ways in the future. But we can look at this and kind of identify, if you like, what the base positions are. And usually within a kind of cultural studies view, there's the base positions of things like race, ethnicity, gender, kind of social identity issues, which, if you like, and are increasingly, and thankfully increasingly, becoming questions within the mainstream. So there's a whole debate and discussion within Hollywood movies, finally, about whitewashing, about kind of Western actors taking on roles from people from non-Western societies and cultures. And there's debate within our mass media about racism and representation. Now, how do we understand and manage these differeces, and how do we comprehend them in terms of cultures more generally and subcultures more specifically? Because we're kind of like, it's the argument that Robert Proust makes about, kind of to understand society, you have to understand it as if you like, a mosaic of different subcultures that are brought together to form the if you like, the mother or the main culture. So what then does digital technology and digital media do that changes the way, or skews or reconfigures the way that we think about our intercultural understanding and experience? How in the socially mediated, globalized age do we think about our sense of community? Do we think about communities of interest? Do we think about communities of identity? Do we think about communities of location? What are the range of factors that we want to draw upon, or we're able to draw upon, which kind of inform us about our cultural understanding? And some of the very charged political debates that are present at the moment about nationalism and identity and migration. We've covered these topics previously. So it's kind of, how do we navigate these differences? How do we become competent and cognizant of other people's differences, and how do we understand them? What's the kind of mindset, the skill sets that we need, the kind of empathy that we need to draw on? What's the level of empathy and the form of empathy in order for us to have a kind of functional awareness of intercultural differences, and so that we can make sense of the different kinds of attitudes and dispositions that are relevant to understanding different cultures, and we can think through, if you like, what the different ingredients might be that inform us with a kind of forward-looking intercultural interaction. Anyway, the notes for this are up on the DMU Commons wiki, so just go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk and you can download them in the TECH3501 section. There's some reading material, and I've not really looked at video material up to this point, so maybe that's something that we can all do. We can make some recommendations as to what the kind of video material might be that we think would be relevant to these sessions that we've covered in the last few weeks. Let's do a bit of crowdsourcing on this, I think, is the way to do it. Let's use the affordances of the digital technology, and if we can identify particular documentaries that we think are informative and representative of these issues, and that are available via the best to be available via either YouTube or the box of broadcasts, somewhere where they're publicly available, then that would be great. But I'll see you at the lecture, and have a good week.